struggling, I have to admit, the same thing kind of as my husband, unsupervised visits for one of our kids, and we're nervous and concerned, but at the same time, we're going to trust God. So that's what we're struggling with. So tonight, I'm going to talk to you about powerless. Somebody holler out powerless. I got to wake you up tonight. Somebody say powerless. How many of you realize that you are powerless? Do you realize that you're powerless? There's only one way that you've got power, so we're going to talk about it tonight. So principle 1, realize I am not God. I admit that I am powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing and that my life is unmanageable. Matthew 5:3 says, happy are those who know they are spiritually poor. Step 1 goes with this. We admit we were powerless over our addictions and compulsive behaviors, that our lives have become unmanageable. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. Romans 7:18. In principle 1, several of you, hopefully you were down at Jawbone a couple weeks ago when Jerry started us off. So we are back at the beginning. So if you're just getting started, this is a great time for you to get started, because we're literally going back to the beginning of everything. So again, we realize in principle 1 that we are not God. We admit we are powerless to control our tendency to do the wrong thing and that our lives have become unmanageable. If I'm honest, I feel like my life is unmanageable quite often. How many of you would agree that you feel like sometimes your life is just, it's crazy. You're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing, Lord? As soon as we take this step and admit that we are powerless, we start to change. We see that our old ways of trying to control our hurts, habits, and hang-ups didn't and doesn't work. They were buried with our denial and held onto with our false power. Tonight we have quite a little bit to cover. The first part, we're going to talk about 4 actions and that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to get into, we always know, we usually have an acrostic with a lot of our lessons, so we'll get to that. But we're going to talk about 4 actions that we're going to focus on first. First is 2 things we have to stop doing and 2 things we need to start doing. In lesson 1, we talked about the first action we need to take, which is stop denying the pain. This disables our feelings, wastes our energy, negates our growth, isolates us from God, and alienates us from our relationships, and lengthens our pain. Lengthens your pain. When you stop denying, you're cutting that pain off. You're ready to accept principle 1 when your pain is greater than your fear. Psalm 6:2 verses 2 through 3 says, David talks about a time when he came to the end of his emotional and physical resources. I can't talk tonight. Have mercy on me and be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am weak, faint, frail. Heal me, O Lord, for my bones are dismayed and anguished. My soul, as well as my body, is greatly dismayed. But as for you, O Lord, how long until you act on my behalf? When David's pain finally surpassed his fear, he was able to face his denial and feel the reality of his pain. In the same way, if you want to get rid of your pain, you must face it and go through it. And that's hard to accept sometimes, that you're like, nope, I just want to get through the mountain and be done. But sometimes through the trials, not sometimes, but always, we can walk away learning something. We can be breaking off things that need broken off of us. Number 2, it says, stop playing God. You're either going to serve God or yourself. You cannot do both. Let me say it again. You cannot serve yourself and serve God. Another term for serving in ourselves is the word flesh. And if you take the H off of flesh, you spin the word around, you know what word you come up with? Self. Somebody already knew that. Who was that? She's been doing her homework. It is what we are when we are left to our own devices. God needs to be the one in control, not you, not me, only him. And I think if we're all honest, we probably all of us struggle with a little bit of control issues, if we're honest, because we want it to go our way. We want the silver lining. We want the beautiful car. Just don't wreck it like I wrecked mine. Like we want the fancy house, like the Joneses down the street. But is that what God has for you? Number 3, start admitting our powerlessness. The lust of power is not rooted in our strengths, but in our weakness. We have to admit we are powerless and turn our lives over to God fully. Matthew 19:26 says, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. The last action is this. Number 4, start admitting that our lives have become unmanageable. It is with this admission that you finally realize you are out of control and are powerless to do anything on your own. All right, so for the acrostic tonight, I don't know how many of you got your bulletin. If you got your bulletin, wave it around. I always say wave it around like you just don't care. Like, yeah, okay. Rebecca's waving hers. Like some of you guys got it like that. I do it every time I'm up here. All right, so we're going to start with the P. We start to see that we are no longer trapped by our P is pride. Pride ends in a fall when humility brings honor. Psalms 29:23. I have this nifty little thing I want to tell you. It says, ignorance plus power plus pride equals a deadly mixture. Again, that's ignorance plus power plus pride equals a deadly mixture. Our false pride undermines our faith and it cuts us off from God and others. See, when God's presence is welcome, there's no room for pride because he makes us aware of our true self. And that is totally true. When you are in communion with God, if you start to get out of line, if you're truly in communion with him, his Holy Spirit is going to convict you to go, whoa, that was the wrong kind of move. All right, so the next one we're going to do is the O, and it is only ifs. Have you ever had a case of the only ifs? Like, seriously, be honest. Like, I think I do it sometimes, like daily, like even at school with the kids. I'm like, only if you would act this way, we wouldn't have this problem. I literally just said that like 3 times today. If only, for example, if only they hadn't walked out on me. If only I had stopped drinking sooner. If only I wouldn't have taken that hit. If only this, if only that. Start walking in the truth rather than living in a fantasy land. Luke 12 tells us, whatever is covered up will be uncovered, and every secret will be made known. So then, whatever you have said in the dark will be heard in the broad of daylight. Our next letter is the W, which is for worrying. You must admit that almost everything you worry about never happens. Is that not, that's true. Like, I think about when Josh and I got together, I was working on, not worrying so much, but then I think that's where, it's great when you're in that equally yoked relationship. And he was like, you worry way too much. You worry about things that you don't need to worry about. You worry about things that are out of your control. And it opened my ears. I'll be honest, it was. And, now I get told all the time, you're too positive. You're too positive. Not by him. He gets the truth out all the time. But even at school, you'll find you're in certain situations. I found myself, I told him this, I work in the school system. I'm a special needs aide, and I get to be in a classroom with 2 wonderful, lovely ladies and a wonderful room full of kids. And I want to cry. And I told Josh the other day, I said, I know exactly why I'm here. I know exactly why I'm here. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, they looked me straight in the face today and said, we need your positivity because we do a lot of worrying and a lot of complaining around here. And you just automatically turn it around and go, nope, that's not what we're going to do. And so I encourage you to evaluate that. Are you worrying about things that are probably never going to happen? Are you worrying about things even that have already happened? Remember, you can't change what has already happened. You can only change what you do in your future. All right. Matthew 6 tells us, don't be anxious about tomorrow. God will take care of your tomorrow too. Live one day at a time. So the next letter we have is the E. We have to quit trying to escape. Before we admit we are powerless, we try to escape and hide from our hurts, habits, and hang-ups by getting involved. Like for me, I was involved in unhealthy relationships. Maybe you were abusing drugs or alcohol by eating or not eating, so on and so on. Trying to escape pain drains us of our precious energy and time. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 13 through 14 tells us, "For light is capable of showing up everything for what it really is. It is even possible, after all it has happened to you, for light to turn the things it shines upon into light also." All right, so the R stands for resentments. I think this can be a big one because sometimes we suppress our feelings. We suppress things that we've been hurt by or even we've hurt others by, and we allow it to fester. And honestly, resentments can turn into what I like to call an emotional cancer. An emotional cancer. And so Paul tells us in Ephesians, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold." By offering up your forgiveness to those that have hurt you or that you've even hurt, you're not only freeing them, but you're freeing yourself. And letting go of resentment is a big, big step in this part of your recovery, is that you really need to pray about, God, what am I holding towards someone else that I should not be holding? And they might have really hurt you. And should have they hurt you? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, move forward. Let your guard down. Let your pride down. And let yourself begin to heal for real. When you admit you are powerless by yourself, you give up another E, which is emptiness. Jesus said, "My purpose is to give you life in all its fullness," John 10:10. So the first S stands for selfishness. Say that 10 times and don't tell me you don't become tongue. I can't even do it. See? One time, selfishness. I can't do it. Luke 17:33 tells us, "Whoever clings to his life shall lose it, and whoever loses his life shall save it." Simply said, selfishness is at the heart of most problems between people. And the last S stands for separation. Separation from God can feel real, but it is never permanent. When we can't find God, we need to ask ourselves, who moved? I'll give you a little hint. It wasn't God. So what has changed in your heart? What has changed in your mind, in your life that is bringing that separation between you and God? See, nothing separates us from the love of God, from the forgiveness, from having a relationship with Him. Romans 8 tells us that He died for us. He did it. He didn't just pick Josh and say, "Okay, I died for that one. I died for that one." The scripture clearly says He died for us. Us. Do you see that? He didn't say, "I died for men. I died for women. I died for children." He said, "I died for us." So that includes you. Lindsay, if you want to go ahead and come on up. The power to change only comes from God's grace. I want to ask you today to ask yourself, are you ready to stop denying the pain? Are you ready to admit you are powerless, that your life has become unmanageable? Are you ready to truly begin your journey to a life of true recovery today? Not tomorrow, today. I'll tell you, work the steps. We talk about the steps. We talk about the principles. Work them. Stay for small group. Like my husband said, you get to know a lot of people. You get to see, hey, I'm not as screwed up as I thought. I'm not the only one, because we've all made mistakes. Stay for Crosstalk Cafe, where you get to build relationships again with people. And then we have step study opportunities where the men meet and the women meet, and we get to dig in a little deeper. And I'll tell you, we have a women's step study going on right now. Is the men's step study still going on? I can't remember. Yes, we have both going on. I'm a part of the women's, not the men's. we just started about a month ago, and I know since we've started it, I know for all of us, it's been hugely implemental, and it's pulled out a lot in all of us. And so one last thing I want to say to you tonight is this: get involved. And how many of you have one of these? You have a cell phone, right? If you don't have a cell phone, I'm kind of shocked. But we all have one of these. And typically, I can touch it and my phone is on, right? Like, we know how it's, like, technology works now. But do you know why it doesn't come on right now? Because it's powerless until we activate it. And we hit the button. And we say, I'm ready. And your powerlessness is the same thing as this cell phone. When you're ready to hand it over and say, God, it's yours, it's not mine. I want you to take control, not me. That's when the real power comes in. Because see, the same power that flows through God, that raised him from the dead, that healed the leopard, that had men and women walk and healed women with the issue of blood. I think about that constantly. The woman that was ill for years. That same blood, as soon as she accepted Jesus, that same power and virtue flowed through her. And it flows through you. So once you truly accept him, you're no longer powerless because you have handed over the power. You don't need the power anymore. You realize it. Say, God, I give it to you. So tonight we're going to open these altars, and I want you just to really think about, God, where do I need to give you all my power? Where I need to lay down my power and to pick up you?